In today's video, I'm going to be talking about data types in PHP. So let's say we're going to be writing PHP code. Do a less than question mark PHP. And when I work with data, I may not necessarily know what the actual value of that particular piece of data is. And in PHP, along with other programming languages, you have what are called variables, which can vary in value. So let's say, for example, I have a number of pets, which I'll just call num of pets. And initially, I'll say I'll have 2 pets. Now, when you declare a variable, usually what happens in most programming languages, you also have to say that the number of pets variable, that's a number, and then you can assign it a value, which is also a number. In PHP programming, it really doesn't care what type that the variable can be. It's only interested in its value, and it really doesn't care about the type, which is a nice thing to have, but it's also dangerous, especially when you start trying to compare variables and compare conditional statements, is that you can run into situations which I'll go over in the next video where you can have different values that mean the same thing because their types are different. So the number 2, that's actually referred to as an integer. So you can have, so this is an integer. It can also be abbreviated as an int. And those are generally numbers, whole counting numbers in mathematics, 0, 1, 2, and it goes all the way to probably, I don't know what the exact value is, but it's defined by a constant in PHP called PHP underscore int underscore max. So whatever that number is, and it depends which operating system you run it on, that's the maximum integer you have. In addition to that, it also works on the negative number scale. So you can have -1, -2, and so forth. I don't know what the max value is off the top of my head. On the negative number scale, it's probably very close to PHP underscore int underscore max, which is a constant. That value doesn't really change all that often. Another type of piece of data that you can have in PHP is called a Boolean value. So for example, let's say, does this file exist? And you can set it initially equal to false. The word false, and it could be also in uppercase. Some people write in uppercase as well. That's also valid. So Boolean values come in, you have 2 possible values. You have true for yes, and then you also have false for no. And they're useful in making decisions. Like if the file doesn't exist, I should do this. If it does exist, then I should read the file. So that's a second data type. Label this 1, label this 2. Another type of data that you can also work with in PHP is a very important data type, because you deal with a lot on the web, and those are strings. So I can say $address line 1, and I can say that's equal to, and I begin it with an apostrophe, which tells PHP to take the literal value of what I'm typing, which I would say I live at 1 test lane. So in that data type, the value, the 1 test lane, that's a string. And when you use single quotes in a string, that tells PHP we're going to take the literal value of what I see. Just to give you an example of what double quotes do. Actually, before I do that, other programming languages, I always have to go back to other programming languages. The single quotes generally mean they refer to as a single character. So if I were to like program in Java or the C language, I would do, well, I don't want to do numbers as strings yet. I'll do like the character T. And if you try to do 2 characters, that's not valid. But PHP, it's cool with it. There's really no notion of characters. Well, there may be. It just treats everything as a string. Now with double quotes, we'll just do another variable, $ statement. What double quotes will do is it will interpret the contents of the string. So I can do Joe has $num of pets /n. Let me clarify this. So the quotation marks tell PHP that I'm not going to take the literal value of the string. What it will actually do when I echo out the statement as output, it'll take a look at the contents of that string and say, well, it'll go Joe has, and they'll see a number of pets and go, oh, that's a variable. And it'll go, well, what's the value of num of pets? Well, it's 2 up here. Joe has 2, and I didn't put the word pets, so I'm going to do a little improvising here. Joe has 2 pets. Now this \n has a special significance. This is the escape sequence for a new line. That's equivalent to pressing enter on your keyboard. And so it will actually it will actually do a new line, which you can't see, but if I start printing out another line, the next line would appear right below it. Now another interesting thing about strings, I have enough space for this, is what I like to call the Irish problem. This is always a fun problem. Let's say the address line 1, let's assign it the value of O'Brien Street. And the problem is that if I put an apostrophe here, PHP is going, I don't know what to do because I see an apostrophe here which starts the beginning of a string, an apostrophe here that ends the string, but there's all this text after it and another apostrophe. That's a syntax error, and it won't run. So what you would have to do in this situation, let me erase this. If you want to actually print out the literal apostrophe, you would have to escape that apostrophe, and you would do a \apostrophe. And so when I print out address line 1 for output, which I'll just write in red, it would actually print out O'Brien Street as output. So those are three different types of data. You have an integer, you have a Boolean value, and you also have a string. two more types to talk about. Another variation of numbers are what's are called, in other languages, they're referred to as floating point numbers or doubles. And in just pure mathematics is that they're also called fractions. And unfortunately, if I wanted to write 3 1/4, I can't write it like this in PHP because it just doesn't work that way. And you could think, well, I could do 3 1/4, but it's going to expect to see some mathematic operator here. Are you trying to add something, multiply something? So what I would have to do is represent this number, for example, 3 1/4, as its decimal equivalent. So if I do, what should I do it? What can be 3 1/4? Let's do sales tax, which is extremely low. Let's do sales tax is equal to 3.25 with a semicolon. And that's a fourth data type, which is a float, or in other languages, it's also referred to as a double. PHP really doesn't distinguish between the two. It just knows it's a decimal. It's a number with a decimal point after it and other digits following it. In terms of precision, how much that goes out, I really don't know off the top of my head, because with web programming, you usually aren't concerned about that sort of thing. And the last data type that I want to go over with are called resources. And these generally deal with files. Like if I have a large file of data and if I need to open it, I would do what am I trying to write there? $? File handle. And I would call a function fopen and use a string. I'll do double quotes. No, I can do single quotes. C:, I'll call it stats.txt. And I'll tell it open it as read-only and that it's a text file. So what I've done here is I've called a function fopen, and what fopen does is that it opens up a file on your hard drive for reading or for writing. It doesn't do any reading or writing at this point. It just tries to open the file like you would open a Word document. Our first argument is the file name, which has a data type of string. The second data type, the second parameter, it also has a data type of string. And what fopen returns is, in most situations, if it's successful, it will return a resource, which is a reference to the file. Now here's where things get weird with PHP. And this usually happens with most things. If PHP is not able to, for example, do something that you want it to do, in this situation, open a file or maybe open a connection to a database, it will return false, which is a Boolean type. So in this situation, fopen, it could return a resource, or fopen can return a Boolean. And in that situation, you have a sixth notion. It's not really a data type. You'll see this in the documentation, but it's called mixed. So that means it could return something with two different data types, and this is where you have to be very, very careful, because, which I'll get into the next video, is that you can have variables with different values and different data types and have them mean the same thing. And if you aren't careful, it will cause all sorts of errors and chaos. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.